to go all out.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
I haven't lost
30
yet.
seconds until minions spawn. Minions have spawned.
Why didn't I eat before I got here? Ezreal, why?
An enemy has been slain. An ally has been
This
slain.
place is on a whole other level. No more training wheels, I guess.
An ally has been slain. Has been slain. An enemy has been slain. Double kill. Rampage. Enemy killing spree. Unstoppable. Dominating.
No, not that. Crimson Ruin? Oh, I suck at naming attacks. Quit messing around.
19-year-old Briton Michael Carroll. He won £9.7 million in 2002 and quickly became one of the UK's most infamous winners, starting his fame by collecting his winnings wearing a police tracking anklet, according to the BBC. Michael then went about spending his newly found fortune responsibly, investing in his future and keeping a low profile. Except he did none of those things. The first thing Michael did? Quit his job working as a garbage man, or bin man as they say across the pond. Let's just put a little pin in here for a minute, we'll be coming back to this. Michael kept partying, gaining nicknames like the Lotto Lout and King of the Chavs. For those of you not in the know, lout is British slang for a lazy, untidy, and idle man. And chav is a derogatory term used towards lower income people who dress in sports clothing and jewelry. He spent about £4 million on friends and family, which seems fine on paper, but according to Michael, can become a problem for winners. Or in his words, family and friends will come out of the woodwork wanting their money, and they will find themselves surrounded by lots of fake people. Michael also purchased a 5-bedroom mansion known as The Grange for £343,000, according to the Daily Mail, followed by another £400,000 renovating it into a personal party house. Here he would entertain guests with the fine English art of the destruction derby in his garden, and massive parties that involved a copious amount of vices, including companionship.
Companionship? He did what? With how many? Hey, goddamn!
Michael kept up his previous lifestyle, indulging in luxuries like bling and cars, and getting in trouble with the law.
You violated the law.
For shooting pellet guns at cars, holding rowdy all-night parties at hotels, and throwing Big Macs at pedestrians. Oh goodness. It wasn't all parties though. Michael also suffered 2 failed relationships and was extorted by local gangs, according to an interview he gave The Mirror. In the end, Michael was down to his last million in 2005 and sold his mansion at a significant loss in 2010 due to impressive damages. He eventually moved to Scotland and, after a brief stint of homelessness, now has a steady job and a place to live. Michael's story still ends on a happier note than some. As far as we can tell, no one died. A statement I realize sets the tone of the rest of this episode. Using Michael as a case study, we can identify 4 common points into which lottery winners pour their money, even if his spending was more extravagant than others. First off, quitting jobs after winning. Odds are if you've read an article about someone winning the jackpot, you've seen this mentioned. Which makes sense. Relaxing without having to worry about money is certainly appealing. That's probably why in 2019 alone, we have multiple cases where that exact thing happened. It's what Lara and Roger Griffiths did when they won £1.8 million, leaving their jobs as a teacher and IT manager respectively. Their winnings lasted less than 10 years after vacations, investing in a spa, and buying a home for £800,000. Lara and Roger's marriage also ended with their fortune, as the two divorced with Lara having to sell off her possessions to feed her children, blaming her husband for their financial woes. Which brings us to point number 2, buying an expensive home. Like with William Budd Post III, a drifter who won $16.8 million from the Pennsylvania Lottery in 1988. He bought himself a mansion in 1989 for $395,000, or about $800,000 today. It later sold for just $65,000 after years of neglect. He also bought a plane.
What, you telling me he had a plane? Did he even have a license for it?
Of course not.
Oh, that's lame.
William went on to lose a third of his winnings to his former landlady, who had actually paid for a third of the lottery tickets he'd bought. He also faced a Game of Thrones-style attempt on the lives of him and his wife by his brother, who wanted to inherit his money. Thankfully for William, the hitman his brother hired turned out to actually be a police informant. Despite all of this and the sale of most of his assets, William later spent all of his remaining $2.6 million on 2 houses, cars, motorcycles, TVs, computers, a luxury camper, and a sailboat. William later received a restraining order from his now ex-wife because he fired a rifle at her car, was arrested on his boat because he fired a shotgun at a debt collector, and then went back to his old drifter life. Which brings us to point 3, expensive changes in lifestyle. You know, buying expensive cars, jewelry, luxury items, and vices. Britain's youngest lotto winner, 16-year-old Callie Rogers, won £1.9 million in 2003 and spent it on expensive clothes, vacations, cars, a breast augmentation, and $250,000 solely on, stuff? Uh-oh. After blowing through her fortune, Kaylee went through a bout of depression and was sent to the hospital after being savagely beaten by 2 women dog-sitting at her boyfriend's house. She now says she regrets not keeping enough of her winnings to help her youngest son, Blake, who suffers from cerebral palsy. Though she did also purchase her mother a home, which is nice. It's nice to help people you care about. Which brings us to our final point, spreading the wealth. Spending that cash without thinking about it, even for benevolent reasons, can have consequences. Take John Whitaker, already worth $17 million thanks to his construction business. He took home $113.9 million from the lottery in 2002. Besides drinks and gentlemen's clubs, according to USA Today, Whitaker spent his fortune building churches, setting up a foundation to help others, and sharing money with his granddaughter. His granddaughter who later passed away of a believed overdose, something that he blamed on the money. But spending so much money gets attention. And soon his foundation was hit with so many requests that the Postal Service wouldn't even deliver the mail. And he'd even be accosted in public for money. Should this be surprising? Well, maybe not. As wealth counselor Shefra Burke said to the Eagle Tribune, for many people who come into wealth suddenly, if they have not acquired good money skills prior to this windfall, often they struggle and make poor choices. So in that case, what can you do to avoid having a sudden windfall twist your dream into a nightmare? Well, according to insurance firm State Farm, there are a few things you can do. Take some time to clear your head. Hire a lawyer, financial advisor, and an accountant. And if you have to give interviews or release your name, maybe set up a P.O. box and new phone number to protect your identity. But maybe the best idea is to just set a budget. That's what Shark Tank investor and Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban suggested. You don't become a smart investor when you win the lottery. Don't make investments. You can put it in the bank and live comfortably forever. Or as fellow Shark Tank investor Kevin O'Leary put it when speaking to NBC, you've won financial freedom. Don't screw it up. His advice? Pay yourself a fixed sum each year. And if you want to invest in low volatility, dividend paying stocks. Or in other words, not the high risk world of gambling. And that's the thing. It's fun to think about this kind of thing, but your odds of winning are 1 in 292.2 million. And, this is important, playing the lottery is gambling. Gambling can be addictive, and gambling addiction is a serious problem. Whether you're spending on lottery tickets or loot boxes, be sure to set a budget that you can afford to lose. And don't get taken in chasing the big win. It can cost more than you can afford. Whew, that was a heavy story. Hey, Howard, got any stories to lighten the mood?
Like how a man took his last $5,000 to the blackjack table, beat the odds, and built a company worth billions?
Yeah? Go on. Which company? Ooh, Weyland-Yutani?
No,
Hogwarts.
that's not a company.
The worshipful company of fishmongers.
The hook theme is there at least, but you've lost the plot. If you want to learn the story of a big gamble with $1 billion happy ending, check out the latest video from our friends at Hook, here.
Our work with the Airline Pilot Club, so I'll be doing a keynote about that, and I'll be also doing a meetup. Now, if you don't know what the Pilot Career Live event is, then I suggest you go down and check out their website, right? They do Pilot Career Lives events all over Europe, so in the UK, in Ireland, in Germany, in Italy, and in Spain. And it's an event where if you want to become a pilot, either civilian or military, that's the place to be, all right? The flight schools will be there, the airlines will be there, other aviation companies will be there, I will be there. So if you use the link that is here in the description of the video, which is Mentor100, well then you get free entrance to the event. Just make sure that you get the tickets online, because you won't be able to quote the code if you buy it at the door. And come over there, say hello. It's always lovely to see you guys. Right guys, so passenger weights. To dive straight into it, the reason I'm doing this video is because I did a video last week about the weight and balance of aircraft. So what happens if you don't take the seats where you're being assigned? What if a lot of passengers are sitting in the front of the aircraft or in the back of the aircraft? How dangerous would that be? And I'm going to link to that video up here, and I highly recommend you to check it out. But a question that came out is like, okay,